Hello and good morning from Cape Town in South Africa. Our guest today, we're honored to be in the presence of Professor Fortunata Makene, the Executive Director of the Economic and Social Research Foundation in Tanzania. She's also an expert in development sociology, gender, and social protection with extensive experience in academic and policy research. We're honored to have you as a guest in Trending Ecos, Professor.
Thank you. I'm humble, glad to be here.
Professor, just to delve straight ahead into the gunfire, as they say, I'd like to ask you first, when it comes to South and South cooperation, how can BRICS help develop a deeper South-South cooperation among its member states when it comes to supporting research?
Thank you. That's a very good question. And just tackling this question in the response to what we have done or worked with BRICS before. So first of all, it's great for BRICS to come into the picture as an alternative voice because it has always been the West which supports research in the South, in the global South. So when it comes to BRICS, there are so many things that BRICS can do, and this is because of most BRICS countries and the southern countries, they are similar in some aspects. So the understanding of the issues when it comes to BRICS, I think it will be more related compared to the other blocks. So there are a few areas that I see it will be important for BRICS to support research and innovation in that case in the global South. Well, the main issue which has always been the case is funding for research. The whole process of evidence gathering is related to gathering data, publishing, and you name it, in order to share knowledge.
Yes.
So, gathering data collection is a very expensive exercise. So that's one area that BRICS can definitely come in and assist the global South when it comes to research. But also, if you think of China, South Africa, India, they're very advanced technologically. And so the sharing of this technology and expertise will also be another area that BRICS can be very supportive when it comes to research in the global South. Capacity building. As you are aware, most of these countries, they are a bit advanced in terms of both technology, but also skills. And sharing of skills between BRICS and the global South will really be important to enhance the think tanks of the global South. And when I say about sharing of technical expertise, as you can see or you're aware, China, for instance, or India, or South Africa, they are so much advanced, maybe in, like you can say, pharmaceutical industries, for instance, agriculture, and a lot of other sectors, infrastructure development. So this also, they can work with the think tanks, but with the think tanks what would be the best way to, for instance, to get more yield in agriculture, in rice, or you can think, oh, what kind of like a research methodology? There are so many advanced research methodology, for instance. How can they support the think tanks so that they can also be competitive? But also publications. As you are aware, the whole process of publication is very expensive.
Of course.
So. And also, it's very hard to get into top-tier journals if you're from the South. Mm-hmm. That has really been a challenge. So although we do both academic research and policy research, but academic research has to get into the top-tier journals. And if you don't get that, then nobody can know, you cannot advance knowledge from the global South. So those are some of the areas that I see are important for BRICS to support research and innovation in the global South.
Well, that was a wonderful, fulfilling answer, Professor. Coming to the second question related to local knowledge, in what ways does local knowledge contribute uniquely to addressing development challenges in Global South, such as poverty, climate hazards, and education, compared to knowledge generated elsewhere?
Yeah, thank you. So, one thing first, when you talk about gathering knowledge or producing knowledge, so most of us will think about just you go in the field, you do research, you do analysis, you write, you publish, whether it's an academic or policy paper, or share information, online, or that's. But when you think of about local knowledge, it's more to it. It's the stories, it's the context, it's the experience of the people. So, and all these are very, very important to address particular problems of that particular area. So you can think of problems of climate change, for instance, or deforestation. I mean, like people who live in the area have a very unique way because they have lived there for long. They have seen how the different seasons come and go. And of course, now things are changing because of climate change. But they are better suited to address it. Like I remember a while ago, I was reading about this Machu Picchu. It's in the Southern America where they have just the local people have really produced different varieties and they have lived very harmonious with nature. Think about education problems, right? Education in general. So now education is a global norm. So everybody needs to go to school, learn to read, to write. But what about addressing particular problems within the locale? For instance, why aren't people going to school? You can say, oh, it's because of poverty. Maybe there's more than just poverty. There's belief systems. A few years back, we did a research on out-of-school children, and we wanted to be very context-specific to understand, okay, education for elementary school is free. Why aren't people still going to school? So when we went to the field and we look, there was more to it than just free access to education. There are problems of distance, there are problems of food, there are problems of disabilities. And so if you just come and just do like the basic research to understand why are children in Tanzania not going to school?
Yes.
Then you won't be able to understand. So there has to be a story behind. There has to be a context. Even health. What kind of behavior, for instance, people in a certain locale have that prompt them to a particular health problem? So then that way you can develop interventions that are specifically tailored towards the particular group. So that's why I think it's very, very important to just think about when you are coming up with interventions in any field. It's very important to have to gather knowledge from the local community because they are better suited to solve their own problems. Technology helps, also different ideas help, but very specific local context matters.
No, I do agree. When doing research from an external view, you might not get the whole picture, not as much as local people who are directly affected by it. So it's easier to look at a certain problem from outside rather than delving deep and look at it from the inside at many different levels. And I think there lies the better evidence generated. Don't you agree, Professor?
Yes, I completely agree. And again, as I mentioned, if you look from the context of the local people,
yes,
and so you can have tailor-made solutions. Mm-hmm. And one of the
tailor-made, I like that word.
Yeah, one of the because even for us, for instance, we live in the capital city, but we do research all over the country. So when you go to the local communities, so we have to involve the people from the locale because we feel like they are better suited to provide us with some guidance before we move into the research project or interventions that we want to put in place in that particular locale. Yeah.
When it comes to sharing knowledge, though, Professor, what are the key mechanisms or platforms that can be leveraged to strengthen the sharing of knowledge among Global South?
Yeah, so knowledge produced has to be shared. And there's so many ways to share knowledge. So the way for us academics, for instance, the way we're socialized, you do research, you publish, in the top tier journals, you go to conferences and present the findings, right? So among the Global South, that is one area that we can use to share knowledge. First of all, conference. So I know conferences or workshops or summits. So I understand like tomorrow we're going to have this
Table
around,
conference, yes,
around
where we can share knowledge among
yeah,
think
exactly.
tanks.
So that's one area. But I mean, like I know different institutions or different associations, they have all those annual workshop. The second is publications. And for the publications, they really have to be into different kinds of publications for different kinds of audiences. So you have journal publications; those are suited for academics, so they'll need those for their promotion and all that. But specifically for the work we do, for instance, like ESRF, we do policy research. And it's very important for the journal publications for the growth of the independent researchers, but we also need to communicate with policymakers. And for policymakers, we need to have like different kind of products. Policy briefs, for instance, which are more accessible, then those can be shared by policymakers. But also with policymakers in the Global South, they can also access those. But discussion papers. Discussion papers, the good thing about discussion papers is that it can be in the very format of journal articles, but you don't have to wait and to go through different journals and receive rejections, revise. But as you're doing research, you have your finding, you can produce a discussion paper or in other places they call working papers. You can produce them and share them widely through your website, but also through some mailing lists. So that also can also help us share knowledge in the Global South. But very, very, very important for, I mean, like within a country, for instance, for us, we have found it very useful if you have an opportunity to speak to some leaders who you really want them in a certain sector, you want them to address an issue, whether it's in education or health. That has always been great. Or so you can share that knowledge to them, so that when they go and meet other leaders in the Global South, then they can use that knowledge to share. But nowadays, of course, with the technology, social media has been another very important avenue for sharing knowledge or knowledge products. So through some people still use Facebook, some people use Twitter or Instagram, but still you can put some snippets and then links. So if somebody is interested to go to the deeper information about that, they can go to the link, so through your website or where the information has been published. But what I can say is that like nowadays avenues are unlimited in terms when it comes to sharing knowledge. But the only thing that I really need to emphasize is that we have the working paper and discussion paper are faster ways for the Global South to communicate, because publications in a journal takes a while. You have to go through different rounds of reviews and stuff. But policy briefs, position papers, one-pages and the social media are quicker ways to still share knowledge among the Global South.
Yes, working paper is a much quicker way. It's much an effective way. And also holding conferences such as the roundtable, hopefully we're doing tomorrow. Just the presence of 20 different think tanks from the Middle East and Africa, and sharing knowledge among those think tanks also, as you said, Professor, is an important platform when it comes to sharing knowledge among think tanks as well.
And if I may add, especially kind of remember when you used to talk about think tanks, there are also several avenues among think tanks that we use to share knowledge. For instance, the Southern Voice. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Southern Voice. The Southern Voice is a network of all think tanks in the Global South, from Latin America, Africa, and Asia as well.
Yes.
Yes. So we meet regularly, maybe once or every other year, and discuss issues about the Global South. Southern Voice was very instrumental during when SDGs were being formulated. So that's another avenue because every other year or every year, depending on the financing, that they'll meet and discuss issues about the Global South. And also Africa has used to be African Capacity Building Foundation, for instance, used to have all the network of all think tanks in Africa, which meet once a year to discuss matters regarding Africa problems, social and economic problems, challenges, and opportunities. So within the Global South, and especially with the think tanks, so those are also other avenues that they can be used to advance knowledge, to share experiences, to address social and economic issues of our societies.
Now, if we move now, Professor Fortunata, to an area or a hot topic that is affecting the world today, which is climate change. Can you, given the disproportionate impact of climate change on the Global South, what collaborative strategies can these countries adopt to build resilience and transition in sustainable economies?
Yeah, so I mean, as you rightly say, climate change is one of the really a challenge, a main challenge of our time. And I think as we have learned, because climate change has been, we have been talking about climate change for a while, but I just want to bring you to, as we have learned recently with COVID, the Global South was kind of left behind. What I'm saying, what I mean by that, because we didn't have the advancement of producing our own drugs. We don't have still capacity.
Vaccines.
Yes, drugs and a lot of other equipment that were needed to address that particular challenge. So with climate change, which I think everybody in the world, almost everybody, there are people still who don't believe in it.
Yeah, of course.
So everybody in the world that know if we don't do something, then the impacts will be huge in the years to come. So, and unfortunately, the Global South have limited resources to deal with it, but also have, and you think of, just to give an example, if you're a parent, you're thinking about, okay, so do I feed my kids, or do I send them to a party? So it's kind of similar, but maybe not related. But so the global South actually have limited resources, but with a partnership, they can address this issue of climate change. And what I'm saying that
with cooperation.
With cooperation and partnership, like I say, specifically regional cooperation, especially to share and exchange the best practices, for instance, to address the climate change. Like what, for instance? Climate smart agriculture, you can think about that. Because if we keep using like the old ways of farming, and we don't care about the environment, we cut trees, and so we can learn from each other. Like, what are the best ways, for instance, in saving the environment through climate smart agriculture? The second aspect I'm kind of thinking here is we can't be anti-development, because the countries are really developing a lot of infrastructure development. But how can we do that in a sustainable way? How can we plan our cities in such a way that we think of climate change? So can we plan our cities in such a way more people take the bus to work rather than everybody driving? Can we have enough green spaces within the city? So rather than just I was talking to our vice president is really environment is one of his
agendas.
Yes, and as our country has moved the capital to Dodoma, he was saying that, I don't understand. Everywhere I see people just think of concrete. Why can't they think of trees? So we need to plan our cities with the impacts of climate change in mind. We have to be mindful of that, but also the whole issue about climate financing. So I mean, I think it will be important because there's so much has been pledged about climate financing. But what kind of project are we talking about? Are people aware? I mean, for instance, I know in my own country, like one of the bank has been given these climate financing funds. And I mean, like, so for us, well, I mean, like, I'm not a climate change expert, so I ask, so what kind of financing I'll be asking about? I mean, what kind of projects can be supported by that? And many people are not aware. So how can we raise awareness so that people know how can they access, what kind of projects can be supported by climate financing or the green bonds? So this needs to be clear. This need to be our people need to be well informed about all these kinds of projects. But when I talked about climate smart agriculture, but just natural resources development in general, maintaining forests, water resources, and because if we really we are not mindful when it comes to better management of our natural resources, then we're gonna suffer with the climate change. But I mean, another aspect is just capacitate local community, and if local community understand, then they can put in place mechanism so that it does not affect them or the future generations. For instance, maybe the local communities they have been cutting trees for fuel. Mm-hmm. They don't see they do not see the impact as much. But if you capacitate them, educate them,
they're not as well informed.
Exactly. And nowadays, like I can see our current president, for instance, has come up with this clean cooking efforts. So he's really encouraging and supporting the local, and even like actually she gave a directive, if for any institution that has a minimum of 100 people, they cannot use firewood for cooking, because I mean, like, we think, like, for now, we are good. We have lots of trees. But think about 10 years from now. Think about 100 years from now. What's going to happen? So, and then also supporting the small business.
Be more sustainable.
Yes, but also they supporting them with a gas stove than just a charcoal stove.
Yes, to be more environmentally aware.
Yes, to be more environmentally aware. So now, now if you go to the markets, a lot of those women or men who are cooking using just like wood stove, and they're all using gas now. So, and it has just started. So, but those are some of the little effort of capacitating communities that can bring about changes when it comes to climate. But the main thing is partnership and cooperation within the region, because we can think of, oh, now Tanzania is safe or Kenya is safe, but
what about the next 10 years?
What about next 10 years? So if we all work together, then we can address the problem. And yeah.
And I love the quote you said from your prime minister as well. You said everywhere we go, everyone's talking about concrete, but no one is talking about trees. It's definitely a dilemma in developing countries in order whether to speed up the development or to be more sustainable during the development. Even though to be more sustainable usually means, sometimes it means it's more expensive, sometimes it means it will take longer, rather than being fast about it and just. So it's a dilemma of having the speed of development or to be more aware of environment. And as you said, Professor Fortunata, the answer to this question is not caring about right now only, is caring about where we will be. And things we might be safe now. We might be safe in doing these developmental plans now. Tanzania could be safe now, Kenya, the Middle East could be safe now, but what about the next 10, 20 years? Going into multilateral institutions, Professor, how can multilateral institutions better support cooperations among Global South? What reforms needs to make these institutions more responsive? And like what needs to be the priority of the Global South? How can we harness those multilateral institutions to make sure it better supports Global South countries?
So the issue of multilateralism is a very important, very important, because institutions such as the UN, the World Bank, the IMF, they have been there over the years, and actually they were found because of the challenges that were happening around the world, including our own. Maybe back then when they were founded, Africa or Middle East were not much part of it, but now, there are major challenges that require the multilateral institutions to address. Like poverty, for instance, that is one of the main challenges that multilateral institution address. Poverty. Of course, we just talk about climate change, but economic growth. Yeah. Growth is very important, but it can't be just growth. It has to be inclusive growth. So thinking about what can they do to support the Global South. One area first that I think is important to the whole issue of governance, and it has to be inclusive governance. And what do I mean by
Yes,
that?
I was going to ask, define inclusive governance, Professor.
Yeah. When you talk about inclusive governance, it means decisions, everybody has equal decision, because the way they operate right now, that's not the case. Some countries have more votes compared to others, so that is not inclusive decision making or inclusive governance. Because if I have more vote, I have more power. Definitely, I will give support towards, or I'll give myself better what? I'll favor myself.
Of course.
So that is where inclusiveness is needed. And when you have inclusive governance, means there'll be fair terms of trade for everybody, there'll be fair terms of loans, and so on and so forth. So it's very, very important when you have such a global multinational institutions support the Global South, for instance, in regional trade agreements. And I'm sure the Middle East has one, but Africa, for instance, AU has the African the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. So, and actually, some of the things that the global institutions can do when they support regional institutions, they can address the issue of climate change. You think of, within Africa trade, compared to Africa, across the globe.
Yes, Africa, Europe, or Africa,
Exactly.
US.
Yes.
More Africa.
Yes. So that's one area. They can support the continental free trade, but also they can support training programs. As I'm not sure how Middle East is matching up with the fourth industrial revolution, but I know Africa is behind. And I know, we were behind in the third industrial revolution, which was mostly on ICT. We were behind in the industrial revolution. So the multilateral institutions can support the Africa or the Global South in harnessing the potentials or the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution.
Through training programs.
Training
Training experts.
Exactly.
To be ahead of the fourth industrial revolution.
Exactly.
That's quite a good point, Professor.
Yeah, I see that is very important, because Africa has missed a lot of these revolutions, but now we really need to be caught up. Again, the issues. We talked a little bit earlier, issues of pandemic as well as climate change. So I think it's very important for the multilateral institutions to support that among the Global South. But also the financial support with the favorable terms that I talked about a little bit, and just to make responsive to be responsive when it comes to the problem of the Global South. You don't have to put politics in it or whatever kind of
agendas.
No, there shouldn't be agenda. If there are global there's problems in the global south, then those problems need to be addressed. I mean, like
Without having a hidden agenda or a plan behind it.
exactly, that will be great. But also, well, I mean, technology transfer. The fourth industrial revolution is part, but technology transfer in general is important. But another aspect I've always, and I see this a lot in Tanzania, is the private sector, supporting the private sector to grow.
Definitely.
The private sector is supposed to be the engine of growth, but our private sector are in such an infant stage. So the multilateral institution, they can partner the private sector in the global south and the ones in the up north or the most developed for technological change, for financial support, and so that over time, those from the low and middle income countries, they can also be able to compete globally, but also build the strong economies, create jobs, and consequently reduce poverty or eliminate poverty. So I think these are some of the areas that I see the multilateral institutions can support when it comes to the global south. That's why I know we focus on research when it comes to BRICS. That's why I see BRICS as a very important alternative voice when it comes to to supporting the global south, when it comes to inclusive growth.
That's a great point, Professor. Now, on a local level, what needs to change to make the local research and evidence generation stronger for policymaking?
So, we talked a little bit about localization agenda at the beginning, but I see that on the local level, it's very, very important just to it's very, very important to build evidence, because research is about evidence, to build stronger evidence for policymaking. To me, that's very, very important. But also the whole issue about sustainability, and sustainability of think tanks. What do I say? What am I saying that? So if you build local evidence, it's very, very important that you will have local data, you'll have local experts, you'll have also you'll have also communities that will be the practices will be in the community, or the new the interventions that will still be in the community. So this will also help with when it comes to sustainability, rather than evidence that is not local generated. So it's very hard for sustainability.
In the end of this amazing podcast session, I would just like to say thank you for honoring us with your answers and enriching our knowledge with your answers of such important and, must I say, rather long questions. But you gave us your time, your expertise, your knowledge. You shared with us your ideas as well. And for that, we are amazingly thankful. It was quite an honor to ask you these questions and to have a first row seat to hear the answer to those questions. Is there anything you'd like to say in the end, Professor Fortunata?
Thank you again, Abdulaziz. The pleasure is all mine. This has really been great to have this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about issues regarding think tanks, global, South-South cooperation, but also challenges facing think tanks in the global South. What I can say is that, as we used to say when globalization was the buzzword, right? We live in the world that call for global solutions for global problems. So it's very, very important that we address the problems of the global South using both global solutions but also local evidence. So I think it's very important to put that together. Second, I think that this kind of industrial revolution that we are in right now, what they call the fourth industrial revolution, shouldn't be just the story that the global South is just trying to catch up with the global North. And then finally, again, the challenges, global challenges like poverty, climate change, pandemic. We have learned recent from COVID, so they should be addressed using both local solutions as well as global solutions. But with that, it's very, very important to build the capacity of local of local institutions, of local communities, so that together we can address challenges, but most important, produce knowledge that can cater for the needs of people from both the global north and global south.
Professor, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you, Professor. It was quite an honor having you again.
Thank you. The pleasure's all mine.